Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 3 different ways that you can achieve a tone-on-tone look using pretty much the supplies that you already have. And first off, we're going to start off with embossing. Now, I am going to start with the Lawn Fawn Vellum. This is very similar to a card that I posted the other day, and this is kind of where I got the idea. I went down one track when I started making the previous video, and I ended up going on a whole nother track, so I decided to make a couple of videos. So this is different footage, but this is a similar technique to what I showed before. The first one is I am going to take this sketched bouquet background here. Now, if you don't have a whole background stamp, then never fear, because you can just use any stamps. You can use all these little individual stamps, which you can put together. If you like them to be overlapping, you can do some masking. If not, then you can just stamp them down individually. You certainly don't have to have a stamping platform to do this either, but it is a great tool. This is the one that I prefer. I have done a review on this one. It is my absolute favorite, and I go through all the reasons in that review video. They have been a little bit hard to track down and out of stock in several places, but I think the company is slowly getting them back out. They had a bit of a rush on them, so there are more on their way. And for this one, I have used my anti-static powder pad on the vellum. Then I use some VersaMark sticky embossing ink, which is the best one in my opinion that I have found for all sorts, for stickiness, for longevity of the pad, and make sure you get a re-inker as well. That is extra handy and means that it will last even longer. I am going to use some white embossing powder on this one. Now, I think it's fair to say here, when I say about tone on tone, I mean the same color upon the same color. And for this video, I have chosen to make all of those white. Obviously, tone on tone could be a green on green, it could be blues on blues, it could be any colors that you possibly can think of. For the cards that I needed to create, I decided that I wanted to go with the white theme. So obviously these are going to be all white, but please go for gold. Try out any colors, any tones that you're excited to use. Anything is going to work well. And I have the Hero Arts Infinity rectangle die set there. I am choosing a rectangle out that is going to create a frame. I'm actually just going to use the outside of this piece. I cut all of my paper down to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and that's how I store it. So I know that when I cut a frame out of the inside here, it is going to fit all of my card bases perfectly. And the inside piece is just another piece that I am able to use. I would definitely not throw these away. They are perfect rectangles for any other project. So I cut out a couple of those frames because I'm going to use another one later on. I have the Botanical Borders with Sentiments stamp set there. Then I have these ovals. These are the elliptical ovals from Spellbinders. These are my favorite go-to for adding a little bit of interest around my focal points rather than just a plain oval. You can also layer them up with the plain ovals. Lots of really fun ways that I have been playing with since getting these. I actually had been noticing for quite a while that that was a gap in my card making stash. I did not have anything that could kind of add extra prettiness around my ovals and things like that, which I was using more and more and more. So this set was a great investment for me. Then I have popped some double-sided tape on the back of my frame. I cut down my little embossed vellum just a little bit so it would fit nicely in there. And you could definitely have used foam tape here as well. That would be absolutely perfect to give you some dimension. I just didn't want any more on the base part here. I'm able to put a little bit of double-sided tape on the back of the flowers because the embossing powder is close enough together that you're not going to see the adhesive through the vellum at all. So I added a couple of extra little pieces, just meaning that it will sit nice and flat upon my card base. I pulled out my 4 little tabs there so that I can get a perfectly even frame around and make sure that it is sitting on my card nice and even. And then I have got my tone on tone base there. Obviously, if you used a different color, then it is going to show up a whole lot more. So I realized that this is not easy to see. I guess it's a little bit easier in real life, but I am going to stamp out my happy birthday here. As I said, that Botanical Borders with Sentiments stamp set. This is a great stamp set that I've been using over and over. I lined up my stamps how I need them to go. I am stamping this in some black black ink. This is the VersaFine Onyx black ink, and of course this makes it not tone on tone at all, but I wanted this gorgeous sentiment to really stand out. And there are no rules in card making. Just because these are tone on tone cards doesn't mean I can't add a little bit of black for my sentiment. There are no rules, and this is just for me and for fun. I do have the Curvy Leaves die set here. I'm going to cut the big one in half and just add it up the top and the bottom, and that to me just adds the finishing touches here. As I said, these are in white again, and that just finishes it off nicely. So I am adding these with some liquid glue, some Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, and then once this is dry, it is not going to be moving anywhere. And that is the first technique for doing tone on tone, where I've used white embossing powders on top of vellum, which is going on a white card base. So we're moving on to the second one, and again I'm going to be using these Curvy Leaves die set. This is one of my absolute favorites at the moment. I have been thoroughly enjoying using this. I've had it for a pretty long time now, so you see this in a lot of my videos. But I have die cut out, there's kind of 3 dies in it. There's that really long one, the kind of medium branch, and then the smaller little foliage which just has those 3 leaves to it. And I die cut out 2 of each, and then I am going to stick these together to give them a little bit more dimension. I'm going to use the same Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, and I'm going to apply this with a makeup sponge so that I get a nice thin but even layer, and then I'm going to double these up just to give them a little bit more dimension. Now, a couple of different ways that you could do this if you didn't want to do it this way. You could use really thick cardstock, for example, cut it out of perhaps 110 pound or 120 pound cardstock, and that would make it nice and thick to begin with. Or you could cut this out of some fun foam, particularly if you were doing white or any other color is going to work really well, and you could just stick the fun foam down onto your card base, and that would give you your dimension as well. Then once I have doubled these up, I'm going to stick them down onto one of the panels that I cut from the inside of those frames before. So you know how I said I would keep the insides? Well, I'm going to use one here because this is perfectly going to fit inside the frame that I cut, because obviously that's where it came from. Once I have popped most of these leaves down on the little piece from the inside, then I am going to turn it over and cut off all of those edges, because obviously it's going to be sitting inside of the frame, so I need everything to be nice and smooth around the outside. And this again is giving really nice tone on tone dimension, so just a little bit extra to your backgrounds without kind of taking away the focus from your center point. Once I have popped down all those main pieces, I'm actually going to pick up some of the bits that I cut off and add these in just to fill up the gaps here and there. And that way I don't have to kind of die cut extra pieces. I'm just reusing what I already cut off, and then I will do the same. I'll turn it over and cut off all the extras again. And here is a look of what that tone on tone little bit of dimension looks like. So here's the frame that I cut out earlier on. For this one, I did decide that I wanted a little bit of dimension. These are the extra skinny foam strips from scrapbook.com. A whole lot of these came in the package, and these are fantastic. I'm actually using 2 of them here because it is the perfect width to go around the frame that I created, and I'm able to kind of pull them off nicely together. I have got my frame that is going to go down onto my 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base. And then all I'm doing is adding some liquid glue onto that little piece, and I know that I can slip it right in there. Obviously if you didn't have the same size piece, then you could put the frame on top of it first and then pop it down onto your card base, but this all just worked out really well. You can see that gorgeous tone on tone dimension, and for this one, this is going to be a congratulations card. I have this is called Engagement, I think. This is a very small stamp set from Woodware, so it has a very low price, and it's pretty much my only engagement stamp. It says congratulations on your engagement. I had a couple of friends of mine who just got engaged, so very exciting for them, and this card is heading their way. In fact, it's already made its way to them by the time that you guys will be seeing this. I'm adding a little bit of foam tape onto the back here, and I think with using the leaves, I kind of felt like it wasn't quite as feminine as using some flowers, and I felt like it was just a really nice touch for the both of them. So I did decide to add in a couple of little gems here. I'm using my liquid glue and a wax pencil, a very cheap and cheerful wax pencil to add on the gems, and that just gives it a little bit of sparkle and shine, hopefully without overpowering that gorgeous background that we created and that tone on tone look. So once I show it here in the light, you can see that gorgeous extra little bit of sparkle. Then for the third way to do all of this, there is of course embossing folders, which are one of my favorite things to use in the craft room. I have a couple of new ones that I went ahead and purchased. This is the Bold Floral Drape in 3D. This is from Altenew, and here's what this one looks like once it is embossed. The front and the back look absolutely gorgeous, so you could use either of these. And then I also have this one over here. This is the Fanciful Flowers, and this one is, it kind of just looks like a whole lot of foliage. I really like this one, and again, this is what it looks like once it is embossed. To create this one is going to be very clean and simple. This is kind of the card that I create if I am in a hurry and I want to create something gorgeous, but something that doesn't take me much time at all. I have a piece of silver mirror cardstock here, and I also have my card base. I am going to trim this embossed piece of paper here, and I'm just going to cut it on a random angle. I definitely didn't measure, I just kind of looked for an angle and cut. So then once I've done that, this is going to go down on top of the mirror cardstock, and to adhere that down, I really prefer to use double-sided tape. I just find it a little bit more reliable, and I definitely don't want any of the liquid glue to be kind of smearing around on the mirror cardstock, because you would probably end up seeing that. So double-sided tape it is. I'm going to pop this down. I had cut the mirror cardstock was already in a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch piece, so I'm just going to cut that down on the same angle that is for the embossed piece, and then this is going to sit on my card base. This already looks gorgeous. As I said, this is very kind of quick and simple card making for this third and final technique. I did think I might add another little strip of the silver, so I cut a little bit here, and I didn't even end up using it because I just didn't think it fit. I was trying to decide whether it would go up the top or whether it would go down on the actual piece of embossed cardstock, but I couldn't decide. Then I'm going to use the same stamp set that I used in the first card of this video, and this is the Thinking of You. I'm going to pop this in with some VersaMark Onyx black ink and then stamp that across on the same angle. And as I said, this is a really nice crisp stamping ink, and I really like it for that reason. I did stamp with an acrylic block straight down onto my card base, so I want to make sure that I get a really good impression, and using the VersaMark ink makes sure that I'm going to get that every single time. I have glued this down with some liquid glue so I can get it directly into place, and it's got that gorgeous little border all the way around. Here I am, I'm going to come back with this little strip here and wonder whether I should put this up the top or down the bottom. And now that I'm doing the voiceover for this and I'm seeing it, I quite like it down here as a really thin little strip, but at the time I clearly didn't think it looked right, so as I said, I ended up removing it, but I could have popped it there and it would look just fine. I probably still could pop it on. I think this one is still in my stash if one of my family members hasn't grabbed this one yet. To finish this off, I have taken a glaze pen and I am going to add a couple of little dots just here and there throughout that embossed piece. You can either do this or completely leave this off at all. It is up to you, but there is another tone on tone look using embossing folders with just plain white cardstock embossed, and that gives us the 3 different ways to achieve all of that gorgeous tone on tone look using any colors that you wish. Thank you so much for joining me today. Here we have a quick look at all 3 of the cards that we created. This one is using embossing on the vellum. The middle one is using some die cuts where we layered them up, and the third one is just using embossing folders to create our third and final look. Thank you so much for joining me. I will have all of the supplies linked in the description box below, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!